Hello everyone, this is part 3 of our Racing UI tutorial series, and in this one we'll be showing you how to create a minimap for the game. Here we'll have a minimap that has the player marker. We will go around it when we drive our car, and there will be the other vehicle markers that will show up so we can see where on the map all of our competitors are. Now in our code we'll start by creating our HTML. So first we need to create a minimap container, and in this minimap container we'll have the minimap itself and the player marker. So the player marker will sit on top of the minimap, and the minimap will move instead of the marker moving on the minimap. This is how most minimaps are made, and this will be easier for us to do as well. So now that we have this, we also need to add to the minimap the competitor markers, which will be the other cars that will be moving on the minimap. That way when we pass them behind, they'll be in the position that they're supposed to be on the minimap itself. Great. And now that we have this, we can go ahead and style it. So for our minimap container, we need to set it with position absolute, and it should be in the bottom left, so bottom will be like 6% and left will be 5%. And the reason we're doing 6% instead of the 2 that we have done previously is because the minimap container will be a little bit smaller than the gauge, so that we can compensate for that. And for width we'll add 20 VH, and for height will be the same. We also need to add a border, so that will be like 0.5 VH solid, and let's make it semi-transparent white, so it should be a GBA of 0.7. Okay, and we want to be round, so the border radius will be 50%. That way, regardless of our height or width, it will create a perfect circle. And now, if we load it into our player, we can see the circle to the left. So now, next thing to do will be to add our minimap. So our minimap will have our path, and let's get minimap. So, okay. Now, before we add any styling, we need to make our minimap. So I've already done this, but I'll show you the process that I used. Maybe you find it useful. So in our game, we have selected the view from perspective, which is the default one, to top, and then using high resolution screenshot. We can get our screenshot and import in a editing software. I'm using here Figma. You can use Photoshop or Illustrator even, whatever you prefer. So just a second. Okay, and now here we have it. So first we're just using the pen tool. and it will be a close approximation. It's not going to be perfectly the same. But okay. Single vector. Now we carry our pet, we can add a stroke, should be white. Let's go 50. Okay, so it's nearly the same, and we also make the image. Let's just make it should be as big as the field. Let's not have any field. And let's just group it. So let's not get rid of it, and let's call it minimap. So now we can go ahead and export it. Let's make it twice as big. Export it. Yes. Okay, we're going to grab it and put it in our assets. Right. So now we have the minimap, which is something like this. In our assets, we can go ahead and add it to the minimap. So let's say background image should be URL, assets minimap, background size should be contain, background repeat should be no repeat, and background position will be centered. Alright, so next thing we have to do is to add the width and height. So because I want to keep the resolution the same for the image, what we're going to do is go to our minimap image that we've created, go to properties, and we can select details. So we now see that it's 1602 by 1182, and let's say we want our height to be 60 VH. So now we can Get our calculator and go. The height is and we'll divide it by the height and we get this number, so we can then multiply this number by 60 and we get 81.31. so let's call the width to be 81.32, so we have it rounded up, and let's set its position to be relative. And if we open here, we'll see our minimap go all the way to the bottom. And this is because I want to have our minimap content hide everything that it's overflowing. So now if we press F5, we can go and see only this corner. So right now the 0, 0 coordinate of our map is somewhere over here, but we need to be in the center where our marker will be. So we can just give a top of 50% and left 50%, and we'll position in the center of its parent. And this top corner now is gone. So next we'll add the player marker. So the player marker should be absolutely positioned as well. Let's put the Z index of 2, so we want to be on top of the minimap, and let's say its width should be 4 VH and its height 2. And now we can get our background image. Player marker. Again, the same procedure: background size contain, background repeat no repeat, and background position center. And we want to position it in the center, so we'll go with top and left 50%, and then we do a transform translate of -50 and -50, position it perfectly. And if we open it, we see our marker in the middle here. So now that we have this completed, the last thing we need to do is for the competitor marker, and let's create competitor marker. But first, actually, let's add a competitor marker container, and I'll explain in just a second why we need to do this. And need to have our competitor marker. So our competitor marker container should have a height of 100%, a width of 100%, and position absolute. Now for our competitor marker itself, you just add a position absolute. Let's set the width to 2 and the height to 2. I'm going to put a background color of black, and let's add a border size of 50% and a border of let's go 0.2 solid, and it should be white. It won't have any opacity. And now let's set a transform translate of -50 and -50, just because we want the marker to have its origin in the center. And I think we're done. If we open it, we can see our marker positioned in the center, because this is right now the 0, 0 of the map. Great. So the reason I had to do a container for our marker is because we use our data binding attribute we haven't used before. It's called data bind for. And what data bind for does is actually based on an array in our game. It will create for each item in the array an HTML element. But one of the caveats of using this is that our data bind for and the element data that we get should be in different elements, or more correctly, should be in a child of the element. This is because data bind expressions are evaluated at different times, and there is a slight possibility that data bind with the data from the data bind for will be evaluated before the data bind for and will cause a crash. So we should prevent that. And if you happen to do this in your game, you will notice how it will start triggering warnings about that as well. So in our data bind for, we use the following syntax, which will be element, 2 dots, and the model. So let's not call it element, but let's call it competitor, and our model will be minimap. And we'll call this minimap vehicles. Now that we have this competitor word, we can go here and do data bind style left, and let's put in competitor dot x, and we can do the same with the top, data bind style top, and we can do competitor y. And now we can, this is each member of the array, which would be the vehicles array. You get its x and y coordinates. So now every competitor will be positioned correctly on our minimap. Okay, and the last thing we need to data bind is our minimap itself. And since we'll be moving it a lot, let's use and rotating it, which will be more important. We can use data bind style and add transform. Now, data bind style can be used for any CSS property. So what you do is write data bind style slash, and then you write the CSS property. And in our case will be transform. So this should be minimap transform. And now another thing that we need to add is where the rotation will happen. So by default, the rotation will be based on the center of the map, which is somewhere here. But we want to be where our player is, so that when we turn right, for example, the map will turn left, and it will look like we're drawing in the correct direction. So to do that, again, data bind style, and it should be transform origin. And we can add as minimap dot transform origin. And I think this is everything for our data binding. Now in our game, I've already created our blueprints, so I'm just going to go over them. And let's open the level blueprint. here, first we start by registering our minimap. So again, just like in the last video, create data model from struct and use the struct to be a minimap struct. So the minimap struct will have the transform origins, and the vehicles array. Now in this, the vehicles array will actually be an array of other structs. So if we again open our other struct, we see the x and the y values. So first we register our model, and then in our event tick, where we have update whole data model from struct and the minimap struct. So how do we get the positions for the minimap struct? We have this helper function that we create called get vehicle positions, and what we do here is get our AI minimap, clear the array, then loop through all of our competitors, and we get their world location as an x and a y value, and then we use this macro to just create a transform string from the x and y. Now here in this macro, however, we have some more added things, and the idea is that in our game the 0, 0 coordinate will be somewhere here, which in our minimap, however, it will be the top left corner. So what we've done to fix this, or let's say to be able to use this in our map correctly, we've created two blank actors. So yeah, actor and actor 1. The first actor is in the top left and the other actor is in the bottom right, and we get this, and we use this function to get our corner elements. We get the first one, get its location, which we set the origin x and the origin y. We need this to use it as our 0, and I'll show you in a minute just how. And then we get its location based as a percentage of the map width and height. Now the map width and height are gotten by getting both our actors, and we'll just get the x and y of both and subtract one from the other. So we subtract the x of the first actor from the x coordinate of the second actor, same for the y coordinate. We set it to be absolute, and we set it as the map width and height, and we'll use this to get this percentage. So how this will work is okay, yeah, sorry, this is some unneeded code that I haven't removed. We don't actually set in our map using events. What we do is we go in our get vehicle positions functions, get the position of each vehicle, and then create the transform string. So the transform string is easy. We use the origin x and the origin y coordinates. We subtract from that the current player or competitor coordinate and set it to be absolute. So if I can just illustrate In Paint, really simple. If we have our map, and let's say this is minus 1000. Okay. And when you get this, minus 1000 by minus 1000, and we have a player here, which will be, let's say, 0, 0, or something else, doesn't really matter. We can subtract from this x, the x of the player, and we actually get this. So if this is 0, 0, this will become 1000 in this case. And we do the same here, where we get the origin x and the origin y, and subtract from them the current position. And then we set it to be absolute, so it's not a negative value. And we get the percent of the map width from this coordinate that we've just gotten. And we create a string from the float value by adding a percent as a suffix. So when we get the position, we add it to our AI minimap array. Same goes for the, so when it's completed, we do the same for the player. First we add the AI minimap vehicles to the array, to the struct, sorry. And we do this again, we do the same for the player. We get the world location and the world rotation. We use the z-axis rotation. We set to minus 90 because in the game minus 90 is the top, while in CSS this is 0. So we need to move it to the left to get this as 90. And we reverse it by multiplying it by minus 1, so that when, for example, we turn to the right, the map should rotate to the left, to create the illusion of map rotating with us, of actually we rotating on a map. And then we get again the percents, and we built the string here. And if you're wondering why we're creating this string from inside our game, the reason is that this is more performant to do it on the back end than on the front end. So anything you have with like adding percentage, adding other strings, we should definitely do it in your backend. And then we use this percentage we already have to set the transform origin. And now if we play it, we can see our map on the left, and yeah, we had a warning. So now we can see our output log, and okay, we don't have this warning here, but the warning was that in our styling we've actually set the border with 0.2 but without adding any units. So this should be VH. And so if we open it in our game, now we can see it working as expected. And so if we move, you can see our car moving with the map. We can see if we turn right, the map turns to the left, just like we've explained. And we can see that the positions are not pretty accurate, but this is because of me creating poorly the map rather than the calculations here. So yeah, we can see how we're going through, and the map, we're actually following along the map. This is everything for this part of the tutorial series. If you've enjoyed them so far, please leave a like on the video. Also, we're planning on releasing more tutorial series and other kinds of videos, so you can subscribe to our channel to see more content. And of course, if you have any ideas or feedback, leave a comment. Thank you and have a great day.